Welcome to part 2. Now, when I started this, the conclusion that I came to, peeling back the layers of the Democratic Party, realizing these people are void of all moral, all goodness, and all purity. Void of humanity itself, that there's nothing in there. And since there's nothing in there, I think there's a horrible crab that crawled in there. I think it's the source of lies itself, because there's nothing left. So there's no reason not to lie to gain power. It's all about power. And I think other Democrats are afraid. Some people are Democrats because they're afraid of the Democrats in power. They're afraid not to be Democrat. I think this party has been terrorizing people since its inception. Slave owners, slave traders, the party of the KKK. They're terrorizers. That's all they know how to do. And I think there are people who honestly believe the Democrats are good. And there are people who are afraid and have to keep these other Democrats in power. Keep them in power because they're afraid and they know who they are. It's a horrible, horrible mix, isn't it? Welcome. I hope you enjoy this episode. This is how they think, and this is why they're so dangerous. They feel that they can buy everyone in the world to buy their vote. Who else are they going to vote for? Who else are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for the people who are giving them all free stuff. And there are poor Americans trying to get food stamps who are starving, whose food stamps have been cut down to a quarter of what they were getting. A quarter. But people who are flooding the border get 100% of everything. Not only do they get 100% of everything, but your little darling John McCain and Ted Kennedy, they proposed that illegal immigrants who stole the identities of American citizens and Puerto Rican citizens, by the way, and a regular American would get thrown in jail for decades for stealing someone's identity. Okay, that's how bad it is. But they proposed that if an illegal immigrant who stole an American's identity got a job using someone else's identity, that they should be paid for every quarter that they work. They should get Social Security benefits and get paid for every quarter that they worked. Do you understand this? That's the hero John McCain and the hero Ted Chappaquiddick Kennedy. And then Bush, W. He proposed, a regular American citizen has to work 40 quarters, but if you come here illegally, you only have to work 20 quarters in order to get Social Security or SSI benefits. So they work 20 quarters and they can get SSI benefits. And another thing about immigration that is that the poor, the Americans who are descendants of African slaves that came over here, if you are a new arrival from Africa or any other country, you have preference going to school, college. See, these colleges get money from the government, so they're obligated to have a certain quota, minority quota. So they pick the new arrivals who have come to this country illegally or legally over descendants of slaves. As an American citizen, you have less rights. You have less opportunity should you become impoverished to get assistance from the government. Your children are not preferred even if you are the descendant of African slaves or Hispanics citizens to someone who just came over here illegally or legally from somebody in Africa who's got kids, who wants to go to college. They get in first. That's another thing that really needs to be changed. You have no idea how much someone who is not an American citizen, someone who comes here illegally, the perks that they get, not just, which you may or may not have heard, hate repeating things, but this whole ICE thing. If you're brought into court because you've committed murder, dealt drugs, domestic violence, drunk driving, killed someone while drunk driving, they will let you out the back door and they will free you rather than ICE picking you up and deporting you as somebody who's committed murder. But if you are an American citizen, or if you are a descendant of African slaves, or if you're Hispanic and you are a citizen, you go straight to jail. There's your perks. There's your Democratic Party. And that's why you should not vote for the Democratic Party. There you go. There's a whole list of things from Pocahontas, 1024th breed, that's all she ever heard, to from the KKK, the mobs that we see that is a break off of the KKK. That's where it came from. That's why they're so violent, because it's a violent, stupid party that claims they care about the minorities. But when the Native Americans were protesting in Boston, do not vote for this woman, she's a liar, they voted for her anyway and made excuses for it. But if Trump said, oh, I'm part Native American, he would be crucified. He would be Khashoggied. First one to use that word. He would have been Khashoggied. Jamal Khashoggi. Okay. That's what would have happened to him should he have claimed that he had 1% Native American in him. But if you are a Democrat, you can be an all-and-out liar, change your status in the middle of your job because you're planning on applying to Harvard. And she doesn't even have the academic credentials to have the status of a law professor at Harvard, by the way. She doesn't even have it. If you look back in her history, she doesn't even have it. This is your Democratic Party. And they claim they're the party of the minority, but no. They're the Democratic Party, essentially the problem here, Republican and Democrat. A republic represents the minority. Everyone in a republic's voice can be heard. That's why we have the electoral system. That's the reason why people on the West Coast or people in New York City cannot speak for the entire demographic of the country. If you're a farmer, if you're a steel worker, they can't speak for you. Democrats always are painting all these groups with these brushes. If you're a Muslim, all the Muslims are good. All the Black people are good. All the African American people are good. All the people from whoever, all the Democrats are good. They paint everyone with the same brush. And the problem is that nobody should be painted with the same brush. See, democracy, the majority rules. If the majority wants slavery, then you're going to get slavery. That's why democracy, the Democratic Party, the ideals of that the majority might want something very bad. The majority might want to oppress the minority. And if you've got a democracy, that can happen. If you have a republic, it can't happen. It can't happen. That's why we have the electoral system. That's why the founding fathers, with all their faults, set up the electoral system to speak for the minority. So we can have slavery again if we have a democracy and we destroy a republic, the republic that we have. And unfortunately, the entire world has been painted with one brush. All the whites are bad unless you're a Democrat. Everyone of color is good unless they're a Republican. That's an incredibly broad brush. So all the Native Americans and the Aztecs and the people of South America, no matter how many people they butchered, flayed alive, cut their heart, all that stuff, they're still all good. The only people who were the oppressors were the white people, even though they were conquered by Spain, and most of them are Spanish. Actually, a lot of the countries are majority Italian too. Portuguese, Spanish, and there's some Nazis that came in over there. They kind of snuck in because they were escaping. You can't blame them, really. You can't blame the Nazis for escaping to, like, Argentina. A lot of the Nazis escaped to Argentina. But somehow it's the white people in North America that are bad, though it's really the people from Spain and Portugal who came over. And in South America, that's who they celebrate. They celebrate the Spanish conquistadors. They celebrate Columbus. They celebrate the conquering of the New World. But somehow North America, who is rejecting Columbus Day and wants to make it Indigenous Peoples Day, well, they're doing the opposite, in South America. SJWs, go down there on Columbus Day, go down there and you'll be celebrating the oppressive Spanish conquistadors. Oh, but Spanish people are good because they're not white. But they were the ones who came over. You see how this goes around, and somehow their logic and their thinking is so screwed up. You can be black, a descendant of slaves, and be a Republican, and you're an Uncle Tom. Remember what they call Ben Carson? Remember the name? A house blank? A house blank. And I'm not going to say the word, even though that word isn't the bad word. Putting them together is horrible. And they belittle this man who was the head of pediatric brain surgery. He was the head. And I actually heard Democrats saying about him, oh, don't, he's nothing. Surgeons aren't smart. It's really doctors that are smart. Surgeons, they just cut things. I actually heard Democrats talking on the MSM about how he wasn't smart and are belittling the son on both sides of his family, the descendant of African slaves. They are the most evil group of people. Stupid. They have, it's more than evil and stupid. They've traded in their humanity and their souls. And they've taken on the master of deception. We call him Satan. He's the master of deception. He's the greatest deceiver of all. Here's my soul, here's my humanity. This is who they are. This is a party that looked in the face of African Americans and taught our children through the education system that it was the Republicans who are the Nazis and the KKK And the Democrats are the ones that fought to free the slaves and fight for minorities. They actually looked us all in the face and taught us the opposite, which means if there is a devil, or the idea of what the devil is, a satanic force, the ideal of the master of deception, that's what they've taken on. They became empty and hollow inside because there was nothing in there. They had to take on the lie, and they sold the lie, and they keep selling the lie. And the educational system is the teachers' parties. They give money. The reason why it's that way, because they give money to the Democratic Party, the teachers' union, and you can't get a job unless you belong to the teachers' union. And so if you belong to and then you get paid, then you take your money and you give it back to the Democratic Party. That's the reason why it keeps feeding itself. And the reason why our children are taught to be Democrats is because they've taken over all these systems. And it's feeding, it's like a monster that's getting bigger and bigger and feeding itself from the media to the educational system and Hollywood, which is corrupt. And all they do is make money. It's plastic. They're a bunch of liars. And the Democratic Party owns all these platforms. Nothing that is real, nothing that is pure, nothing that is sacrosanct, nothing that is good, nothing that is moral, nothing that is just. There is no finger in any pie of the Democratic Party that is moral or just or pure. That's why you shouldn't vote for the Democrats. I hope you enjoyed part 2, and I hope everything I told you was quite insightful for you. As you can see, the Democrat Party, beginning as the KKK, Party of Slavery and Jim Crow, broke up into many little groups, much like the little crabs that happened to land in those deerskin Gucci bags of the Cherokee when they went on their wampum pilgrimages to the oceans. Little crabs that crawled in there that became the cold crab omelets with tomato mayonnaise. But these are worse than those crabs. This is mob violence. The Democrat Party has become mob rule, broken up into many little groups and spreading all over the country. You must vote them out of office. You must end the Democrat Party. If you really can't vote for Republican, and I would suggest you reading history and finding out the truth that you may have learned a different truth, what the Republican Party is supposed to stand for and what the Democrat Party has always stood for and is still standing for now, is still the party of the KKK, and the blood and the evil in that blood of the KKK has passed down through generations to today and created many groups like the KKK in different names and different races and ethnicities. But they're out there, and they're evil, and they're violent. And I do not know why they would want to be ruled by someone, by a group of people, by a huge government that is growing so big that it's going to eat all of us. Why Democrats are going out, the only thing I can think of is that they're so afraid. They're so afraid of the people that they know are going to take over this country. They know these people are violent and have no morals and it's by any means, that they have to perpetrate violence themselves for fear that they might be killed. They might be Khashoggied. If you turn against the party in power. That's the only thing I can think of why a human being would want to be ruled by this party and keep that party in power. Give them more blood, give them more energy. It's because they're so afraid. If they don't do it, they'll be Khashoggied. I think that's it. And then there's others that are Democrats who really don't know. They really don't know. And I find it very hard to believe is true. Go out and vote. Get them out of office. Not just for the midterms, but forever. This party must be destroyed. And some good new party must rise in its wake, in its downfall of morals and purity, kind of like the lotus rises out of mud and is pure and good, as pure as a political party could possibly be, but not violent. Not violent. Good night. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it was insightful for you. Goodbye.